My name's Jake Miller, here on our family farm. This farm's now been in our family for 3 generations. My grandfather bought it, Dad farmed it, and now my brother and I are currently farming it with my parents. I typically get up 4:30, 5 o'clock, come over to the farm 5:30 or 6 and get started feeding. Then takes, I don't know, usually 2 hours getting the feeding done. We'll run deliveries, any type of hay customers we have that need bales of hay for horses, we'll take out to them in the mornings. And then usually by 9:30 or 10 o'clock, we're going cutting corn and cutting beans. This time of the year, we're combining corn and soybeans and hauling it in. We'll put it in our storage and then we'll use it for feed throughout the winter time. This year has been the wild prices. Everything, all of our input costs have basically doubled or even tripled on certain things. A lot of that can be related to the economic policies that we're dealing with right now. A lot of trade embargoes and fuel prices with pipelines being shut down, driving fuel prices absolutely through the roof. The combine here that we're out in the field getting right now, we're spending $400 to $500 a day to keep it running just in diesel fuel costs. So right now, that's our biggest challenge that we face is fuel and fertilizer prices. So we used to run, along with our grain operation, we used to run about 150 head of dairy cows that we raised for milk. We did that for about 10 years, and then that's just gotten so brutally cutthroat. There's absolutely very low profit margins in the dairy industry and an awful lot of input, extremely expensive and very, very labor intensive. So about 10 years ago, we got out of dairy, got rid of all of our dairy cattle, and went strictly into raising beef cattle for our beef operation, which are fed along with the corn and soybeans and the hay that we grow here on the farm. All of that is used to feed our cattle. Everything that we raise here goes directly to them. So on our farm, as I said, we're a small family operated farm. We're farming around 300 acres of corn crop, around 200 acres of soybeans. We're doing also around 250 acres of hay ground. We're raising around 150 head of cattle. That includes cows, which are females that have had calves, young heifers that we're raising up to have more calves, and then also our steers, which are the castrated bulls that we'll raise for meat. So we've got about 150 head total. We're sending 4 to 5 steers every month to supply our store with meat, and then we also sell, along with individual cuts, we sell halves and whole steers for people to stock their freezers for the winter. So a lot of people get a bad idea that farmers are harmful to the environment and that we, destroy the ground and the groundwater and streams around us, but nothing could really be further from the truth. Farmers were the original stewards of the land. We do stuff, we go out, we take soil samples in the fall and in the spring. In the fall, we take our crops off, we do the samples, and we'll also do some more in the springtime before we begin our crop planting applications and fertilizer applications. The reason we take the soil samples is to find out what type of nutrients we need. We've gotten down to finding even small things like micronutrients and just small dose amounts that we need. We've gotten to the point where we GPS map the fields as you're going across them. That way you can tell exactly where. It's called a variable rate application. You can bump the rate up in areas of the field that need more fertilizer, cut it back in areas that don't need as much fertilizer. We're starting to do things. It used to be the old way. You get the crops off, you plow the ground or work the ground, turn the soil over. That oftentimes led to a lot of erosion and the loss of your topsoil. Anymore, especially in the East Coast here where we are, we do a lot of what they call no-till farming, which is absolutely no ground tillage at all. All of our planters are no-till conservation planters. They go directly into the ground through the residue on top of the ground. Sometimes it gives you a better weed control like that. We're using certain chemicals for weed control and also insect control. That also goes down in very, very small amounts. The products that we use are extremely expensive, so the idea that we're out there just willy-nilly just dumping it out into the field as we feel like putting it on is just absolute nonsense. It's all done very scientifically and all at a very measured and exact rate. Another one of our big expenses, as I was saying earlier, is the fertilizer cost. This spring, some of the fertilizers that we use, like nitrogen and phosphorus and potash. Nitrogen, for example, went from last year, well, the year prior to this year, we were putting it down at around $200 a ton. Currently this year, to get nitrogen, when you can get it, it is around $900 a ton. A small operation like we're running, it's nothing to have anywhere between a $10,000 and $15,000 fertilizer bill every single month from springtime well through summer while you're trying to get crops in the ground, keep them maintained, keep them fed and fertilized, and then keep the weed for weed control. So it's nothing for a farm like ours to run a $10,000 or $15,000 fertilizer bill. One of the other things we've done throughout the years, farming has gotten so advanced. In the 80s and 90s, a corn crop, doing everything conventional with tillage, we were running anywhere from 100 bushel corn yield, 120 bushel corn yield was pretty much unheard of. And when I say 120 bushel, it's 120 bushel per acre. Anymore, we're running anywhere from 150 up to 350 bushel per acre yield. So on the same amount or even less land, we've more than doubled our production. So those are more the things that we're doing to try and help with the environment. But with that comes higher costs, obviously. But costs get higher, but you're also getting higher yield to try and get higher returns to keep that cost down. So another very controversial thing we hear a lot about in the farming industry is a GMO, which is a genetically modified organism. In 2022, if you can find a product that is not genetically modified, you are basically faced with an impossible task. Anything that has been changed from its original, the way it was originally bred. So if you take a field of corn and put a different variety of corn next to that, and a bee flies over to that field and pollinates, what they call cross-pollination, that is now a genetically modified organism. So there's nothing wrong with things being genetically modified. All you're doing is pushing for better, higher yields, less inputs, trying to keep it so you don't have to use as much chemicals or as much fertilizer on the crop. But to say, even if something's sprayed with Roundup, which is a very commonly used product on the farm for weed control, most of our corn and soybeans anymore are what they call a Roundup Ready product. Roundup is about the most harmless product you can use. We're using, let's think here, 1 quart of Roundup concentrated would go into a 200-gallon tank, and you'll use 1 quart of Roundup over 1 entire acre of ground. And the idea that that's getting transferred into your food is just absolutely crazy to even think that you would get enough Roundup out of that. We spray it on early enough that there's not even a crop. It's just the crop itself. There's no ears on it. The corn's not there. The soybean pods aren't there yet. We're only using those type of products when it's just the plant itself. But without GMOs, you can figure about 45 to 50% of the world would starve to death. That's one of the things that have allowed us to push yields from that 80, 90, 100 bushel to the acre up into the 3 and 350 bushel to the acre. You have to remember, farmers are now down to around 2% of the population. Population of the world keeps increasing. We keep losing more and more ground. So we have to find ways to grow more and more crops on less ground every single year. And that is the exact purpose of a GMO. So we're standing here in our store on the farm, Miller's Farm Market. We started this in 2017. We'd always sold quarters and half beef before we started the store. And we decided that most people don't have room in a freezer for a quarter or half a steer. So we decided to put the store in and sell individual cuts, bacon, pork chops, scrapple, all your different steaks, burgers, hot dogs, different roasts, chicken. So then you come to the store here, get individual cuts of the meat instead of having to buy a total half a steer or even an entire steer. So that's when we started. That was in 2017. It's been a pretty good way to move extra product on the farm. Always looking for another way, another source of income on the farm. You cannot just rely simply on your farming products to make a living. You have to branch out and do other things in order to make a decent income here working at the farm. So we found out more and more through talking with our customers, the people that come in the store here really like the idea that us as not only just the owners of the store, but we're also the same people that are out there every day feeding and taking care of the animals, giving them their vaccinations and shots, anything like that that needs to be done with the cattle. We're actually the people out there doing it. It's not just some employee coming in here that's just here to put in their 8 or 10 hours a day. They're just there to collect their paycheck at the end of the week. Well, these animals are basically like family to us. You raise them, you give them the best care you possibly can. And we found that a lot of our customers like that idea that they can come in here and talk exactly to the people that are out there every day working with the animals and raising them, let them know how things are going out in the field. So here we are. This is where we feed the cattle twice a day, once in the morning, once at night. These are a younger stock here. These are all just recently weaned off their mother. So what we do, we bring the ground corn in here, dump it here in front of them. So we've got them in 3 separate groups here. This is the young stock. If you come up here, this is our medium to mid-sized steers. And over here are the bigger ones. These guys range anywhere from 6 months out to being butchered all the way up to they'll be going this weekend. We'll be sending some down. So this is what they all look like as they're getting closer to being finished. As you can see, they're not overcrowded. We keep everything clean and bedded good. The happier they are, the more comfortable they are. The more they eat, the quicker they gain weight, and it makes things easier on you. This here is one of our tractors, one of several tractors we have. This is like a medium-sized tractor. We use it probably most out of any of our tractors. Does everyday things, feeding cattle. We've got a loader attachment goes on here for feeding round bales, scoop and feed. This is what we call a grain drill. It's used for planting everything from small grains, wheat, rye, barley, our hay crops. We plant it with that. Also use it for planting soybeans. So you see here, it's what they call a no-till drill. So you don't have to work any of the ground up. It'll go directly into the ground, put the seed in, pack it in. That's pulled with this tractor or any of the other tractors that we have. This is our round baler. We use it once the hay has been mowed, spread out and raked back up in windrows and dried. We use this to bale it up. It puts it in nice big round bale. They can range in size anywhere from 400 pounds to, when you're doing the wetter crops, you get into 1,1900 pound crops. Over here behind the round baler, that is what they call a feed grinder. That's what we run all of our corn through. It grinds it up into a powder, into a smaller edible size. The cows cannot break down corn. If you feed them whole shell corn, it'll just come right back out the back end of them in the form of manure, but in whole entire kernels. It will not process. You have to break it or crack it in some sort of way so the cattle can digest it and get the energy and the fat out of the corn. So that's what we use for that. All three of these things can be hooked to the back of this tractor. We've got bigger tractors for tillage. When we do have to work ground up, we try to avoid that at all costs. But then this will hook to our fertilizer carts for putting fertilizer out in the fields. Very expensive. This tractor here, we just bought it last year. It is $68,000 for that tractor. Our larger tractors, you're spending $90,000 to $120,000 for them. Combines are running anywhere from, buy used ones for $70,000 or $80,000. New ones are $500,000 or $600,000. But so yeah, that's kind of a quick run around of the equipment that we have on the farm.
On average, how much are those tractor tires?
Oh, the tires on it? So these are smaller tires. On the back of this tractor, you're looking at about $900 per tire, and then another $300 to $400 to have them mounted and put on the rims and then back on the tractor. So you've got a little over $2,000 on the back of each tractor. On the smaller tractors, our bigger tractor, you're looking at $1,300 to $1,500 per tire. And the combine, they're around $3,000 per tire. So it's very expensive equipment to run and maintain.